Okay. Live. Testing sound. Soon. Here we are. Okay. Live. Testing sound. Soon. Here we are. Okay. Live. All right, Shane, give me some sound.
I am trying to give you some sound.
Shane, give me some sound.
I am trying to give you some.
All right. Okay. All right. Welcome, everybody, to CanHammer TV. It is July 22nd. We are 3 days before launch of 9th edition. Woohoo! Hype time. Although it's kind of anticlimactic now because we already have everything. But
still nice.
Still nice. So welcome, everybody, to this Custodes Tactica episode 30. And we have tonight special guest, international man of mystery, Mr. Shane Watts. Welcome back, Shane.
Thanks for having me on.
Yes. So when was the last time I had you on, Shane? It must have been like a year ago.
It's definitely been at least a year. I think it was right around like February, I think, of last year. Because it was like right after we had the new Forge World stuff, and I was like totally about Birdmen.
Oh yes, I think you were the one who went through the rules with me of the new Forge World stuff.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so that was some time ago, and you did kind of drop from the Custodes train for a while there. What were you up to on the dark side?
Yeah, I saw the meta, and it just was getting harder and harder to keep performing with pure Custodes. So for a little while, I became a dirty super, and I brought in some Blood Angels because the Smash Caps made things dead. But even then, that started falling off too. So I just tried a whole bunch of things. I was GSC for a little while, and then the Marine meta came out, so that kind of went away real fast.
Yeah.
And then most recently, I was playing Red Scorpions, so Space Marines. As Raven Guard for like LVO and for a few months up to that, I think from like November, December, and January timeframe.
Mm-hmm.
And then since then, it's just been kind of the wild, wild west. And then War of the Spider came out, and I was just like, oh my god, I have to go back.
Straight back. Nice. Didn't you get pretty heavy into Kill Team at one point?
Yes. Actually, if it was not for just everything being stopped, I would be playing Kill Team as well pretty consistently. This obviously the biggest drawback to getting into Kill Team, or I should say making it hard to get more into Kill Team, is that a lot of the major events are concurrent with the 40k events.
Yeah.
So I have to miss a lot of them because I'm playing 40k.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So did you play Custodes in Kill Team? I heard they're like crazy strong.
So I played Custodes for a little while in Kill Team. The biggest problem is that it still is very like board control oriented, and it shifted with the meta. I mean, the main TOs. So there's like Alex and Sheldon out on the West Coast. I'm out here. We have the oh god, I just forgot his name. I'm a terrible person. Does the Nova TO, and I'm sorry
Mike
if
Brandt?
you're listening. No, it's not Mike. There's a specific Kill Team guy.
Oh, Kill Team guy. Okay, I don't know.
And so we all have a chat where we would talk about missions and trying to like improve the format. And so that's where we kind of moved to a kill hold kind of format, and we saw a lot of resurgence for the factions that weren't performing, like Custodes.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, when you have so limited model count, it's still really hard to actually like consistently win.
Yeah, like how many models would you have in your Kill Team? Like 3?
3 at most.
That's awesome. That's super fluffy though. Like one dude is supposed to be able to go and do like a whole mission by himself, right?
Yeah, it's like you got 3 dudes, maybe 2 dudes, although I wouldn't have recommended it then, versus like 10 to 15, sometimes 20.
I like those odds. So really, 40k right now is the same ratio, just larger armies.
I mean, yes and no. The ratio is close, but I think the impact is a little different.
Yeah, for sure. You can't really. A bunch of people have been playing smaller points games because now it's quote unquote supported and you have your own missions and everything, they've been playing smaller points games. And I think the smaller the points you get up to a certain point, Custodes get stronger and stronger because the opponent has less points to deal with you. And they just get relatively tougher and tougher, getting down to like 750, 500 points, especially if you bring some filthy stuff.
I could see that.
Yeah. All right, so you are back on the bandwagon, and back to the good stuff. So, if, for people who don't know, back in the day being, just last year, Shane was, for a longest period, you were top of the ITC for Custodes.
Yep.
And then it was shortly after that everything changed, and then it was also shortly after that they changed like how the factions work and everything. And then you already told us what you're up to. So is that something you want to? I mean, sort of ITC rankings don't really exist right now, but is that something you're looking to try and repeat again?
I mean, I definitely will probably be doing that again. Yeah. Custodes just look so good right now, and I'm so happy that I already own like the range, so I don't have to worry about rebuying anything. Um, but I think pure generally is gonna be great. So why not go for faction while I'm trying to actually continue to win?
So there was this heated debate yesterday on the Discord about whether Custodes are top tier or not top tier. And while that term top tier has never really been defined by any authoritative sentence, a lot of people, we would like to believe that Custodes is pretty close to the top. Maybe not the top, but is one of the better books heading into ninth. And some people believe that it's not, or that we still require soup elements. And so, where's your thinking on that? Given obviously the caveat that nobody's really playing anything right now, and there's not really a meta, and ninth edition is not actually even technically out yet. But where do you think, just on the power of the book and the ninth edition changes, do you think we lie?
I mean, I think with the power boost we got with War of the Spider, and then the way that the missions, or at least I should say the leaked missions, are shown to be played on how you're going to score, I think we have a huge leg up. Honestly, I think that we're going to be in the top as it stands right now.
Yeah. I just today on stream we played two games. I didn't play, but I watched Francois and Chris play a couple of games, and this was already my impression. But my impression is that our easy path to victory will be just to be super tough and just stand there on objectives. And we're certainly good at that now with our book.
Yes.
I think if you can own objectives, you're going to own most of the points. And then the rest is gravy, seems like.
I mean, with half of the points coming from just sitting on objectives, that's a huge thing right there, is just being durable and sitting on the objectives. As long as you can either prevent your opponent from getting those points or ensure that you have secondaries you can achieve, I think you just can't even lose at this point.
Yeah. I mean, it was the few games that I've actually played. It has been literally, I just need to take these 2 or 3 objectives, and then while doing that, a lot of my opponent's army dies, and it's game over.
Yep.
Okay.
I think there's going to be a lot of that.
Okay, so the inquiring mind wants to know what kind of stuff you're brewing around right now.
So I have a few things. I mean, because of how much I love bikes, I initially just wanted to scream with bikes, like right off the bat. But I knew that it was a mistake because of the fact that we have stratagems that effectively make Terminators durable. We have a stratagem to make a Dreadnought durable, and then we have everything else can fall under, the no rerolls or transhuman, etc.
Yeah.
So I really think that the best lists right now, and the main thing I'm looking at going forward, at least initially with, is one bike unit, one Terminator unit, and a Telemon. Because it gives you access to all 3 sets of durability, and effectively you can min-max it because you don't have to worry about, shit, well, I needed it on my other Terminator unit.
Yeah. So are you running a battalion, single patrol? Like what kind of thing? What shield host you going for? What are you liking the look of?
Okay, so um, I have never really liked bringing a lot of characters to begin with. So I already don't want to do a battalion because that's two HQs that I have to bring, even if I don't want to bring two.
Yeah.
Um, so most of the lists that I've been making have been single patrol. Um, I there has been like a Terminator based list that I've been kind of toying around with. As much as it pains me, I made it a Vanguard because being able to just eliminate attack's troop choice at that point and put more points into different Terminator units just seemed like a better choice.
Yeah, I mean the difference between a Vanguard and running two patrols is one CP.
Yep.
And 150 to 68 points on Guardians. Or more for two units, actually.
Yeah, I mean, if you're two patrols, you're at least 300 points right there in Guardians or Sagittarium. And if you're going to all shields, you're bumping that up by another 18 points a squad.
Mm-hmm.
This is like another 36 points over two patrols.
Okay, so you're toying with like the max, hitters and not really running sort of shield units to just sit places.
So the main list I really want to run here, let me bring this up because I actually am in the like final review stages of my faction focus for CanHammer, which I think is coming out next week, but don't quote me on that.
Okay, we love it when CanHammer Custodes articles come out.
Well, this one is entirely by me, so you can't trash it too much.
Oh, we weren't trying to be mean. We did say that your parts of the review were the best parts.
All right, all right, all right. So the list down to the T right now that I'm looking at, that's literally there's a RTT coming up in the area that's gonna like have all of the distancing and required masks and all that shit, so that way I can actually try and play a game. Um, it's a single patrol. HQ is Trajan. I'll get into that in a minute. I have 3 Sagittarum as my troop choice. I can get into that too. Vexilla, and at this point, I'm taking a spear on my Vexilla because it's only 2 points more than a Misericordia, so why not? A 6-man unit of Aquilon with bolters and fists. A 7-man bike unit. I'm currently running Hurricane bolters still, but that's because what I have on the models. I think depending upon how the meta shakes, there's probably a case for salvo launchers, especially since they're the same cost.
Mm-hmm.
And then a Telemon with double storm cannon, because I still think that's probably the way to go.
Mm-hmm.
And then my last 100 points are for an assassin.
Okay, which one by default?
So I'm kind of torn. Right now, I am sitting on the Vindicare simply because I like the fact that it dictates the board state. But depending upon how crazy the meta gets with early stratagem use, I think the Calidus has a lot of play.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's 7 bikes, 6 Aquilon, and the Telemon and your hammer units, basically, and no Guardians, and 1 HQ.
And 1 Sagittarium unit is basically my Guardian equivalent.
Yeah, like 3-man Sagittarium, like cheapest chips.
Yep.
Okay. So that's interesting. So you're gonna dictate board presence through exertion of power, basically, and bikes.
Yes. And the amount of aggression is kind of up to what you're facing, I think.
Yeah.
Especially since really all you have to do is take the midfield. And with the bikes, I should be able to take the midfield turn 1. And then that means my Vexilla is going to be in the midfield by turn 2 at worst, which means Aquilon can come in on that Vexilla if needed.
Yeah. So are you playing in an area where there's enough terrain to hide bikes, like big unit bikes like that?
Some of the stores are. I think this store does, yeah.
Okay. The interesting thing is how bikes will interact with the new terrain rules. I mean, the terrain rules are not really that new, But the distinction between being in and being behind the terrain is very important now.
Yeah.
And the density of the terrain will really vary, I think, depending on where you go, and will really dictate, line of sight and stuff like that. And also how you have to charge around things if there's a lot of terrain. That's my only concern about bikes is how is it going to be affected by the terrain. That was one thing that really got me by the end of eighth. Why I fell off bikes was that it almost seemed like you lost a turn of movement because you couldn't go through the rune on your charge, so you had to hold kind of further back. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes with that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, yeah. I do agree. I think salvos may be strong just because why not? I don't see a lot of horde in with this rule set. I gotta say, even
I think there's an argument that can be made for Horde, honestly, with based on the missions. But we'll see.
yeah, I think there is for sure. I just think everybody the common gab about the internet is that Hordes is dead, and I think that is scaring off the less brave Horde players.
Sure.
Like not the meta setter type mentality, but the people who are just trying to play what everybody thinks is good, and so
Yep.
that's going to turn off a lot of people from playing Hordes of armies, right? Hordes of
Yeah, I
models.
can see that. I can
Yeah.
definitely see that.
Like even Chris, who plays usually like 120 boys and like a whole bunch of grots and stuff, not a boy in sight in his current list. 30 grots is his horde.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
That's sad.
so it's a huge drop, right? Like, are we going to see Gaunt Carpet? Maybe like Eric Latour's will run a Gaunt Carpet, but everybody else would be too scared to do it, right? Because of the common conception that Horde is dead. I agree. I don't think Horde is dead at all. I think if you cover the whole board and you can survive 3 turns, you've won.
Yeah, I definitely think so.
Yeah. So we'll see. I say if it is the vehicle meta that everybody seems to predict, then 7 salvos with the Melta strat on those missiles is going to be nice.
Sure. Yeah. I guess I can kind of talk about why I'm choosing some of these units too, because I know that's kind of been part of the equation is why each unit.
Yeah, go for it, for sure.
So with the whole idea of trying to cut down HQs, I definitely wanted to bring Trajan versus a normal shield captain for a few reasons. One is because that awesome rerolling once to wound, because we don't have any other access to that pretty much at all. But then the big change with the moment shackle just being here, by the way, that stratagem, now that's free.
Yeah.
There's no investment there. Like
So
you
good.
don't have to buy a captain commander trait to get CP back.
So good.
You just bring Trajan and you just get CP back. Granted, it's probably less than you would get with Captain Commander Strategic Mastermind overall, but you have to think about it in the way that buying that Captain Commander trait is 1 CP right off the bat. So already, if you net a CP in that first turn, you still are net 0. So to make up what Trajan gives you for free, you have to do that over the course of 3 to 4 turns. And that's assuming that you've survived for that and that you've managed to roll 5-ups, because I don't know about you, but I'm terrible at rolling 5-ups when it actually matters.
And if you spam all your CP in the second and third turn, you'll get 2 back.
Yep.
If you're lucky, and then you'll have. It's very unlikely you get 1 back in the 4th or 5th turn, spending just 1 CP at a time, right?
Yeah.
So really, you're getting probably 2 to 3 CP if you're lucky, and you're spending 1.
Yep.
So that's an interesting way of looking at it. One assumes that you're going to get a CP back every round, but that's not true because you're probably spent all your CP in the second and third round.
So
Unless
I think Trajan is just a huge investment because of the fact that he just is better than a shield captain at face value. Now, he can't do crazy stuff like go hunt characters like a shield captain on a bike can. He can't. But if you don't need that, then why take it? Let's see. Let's bump. So on to Sagittarum. I know this is probably like the most controversial thing ever, but I still really like Sagittarum. If it wasn't for the fact that shields, like a full shield squad being 18 points more, I probably would be more about it. But the points combined with the fact that the Sagittarum basically can pull double duty just pulls me right back to Sagittarum every time. They're not as durable as shields, But if you can think about it this way, with the board being so much smaller, you can easily be reaching the midfield objectives with those Sagittarium from your home objective without much investment. And don't expect them to kill a unit on their own, but it's extra damage that you could pour in if you need it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can totally see it, especially since they're your one token troop unit, and you want it to be cheap as possible, right? And
Yeah.
3 Sagittarium is no doubt better than 3 dudes with spears.
Yeah.
So if you think of it that way, then fine. I mean, if your only job is to just sit on an objective and survive, then 3 shields is better for sure. But as you say, it's 18 points. That may not be 18 points. You may have to drop a bike or a Terminator to get 18 points, right? Which, in the way you're designing your list, doesn't make any sense. So if you can take a unit that can do something from the back and just sit there, 3 minimum guys, then I think that's fine. Actually, in one of my lists that I've wrote right now, I don't even have a shield unit. I actually am running the Pyrothite spears.
Okay.
With the option that they either just sit at the back and I paid a bit more for that unit, or I can actually drop them if I need them to hit something hard. So I'm just toying with the idea now of, because now's the time to mess around with stuff, right?
Oh, yeah.
What are you losing? You're not losing anything. You're not losing a tournament. Like, just run stuff, see what happens. So I'm like, okay, let's ditch the conventional wisdom of we need shields. Let's run some Guardians that do something. See what happens.
And the fact that the Pyrite Spears are only 55 points is actually, it's very tantalizing, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, and the Meltastrat makes them, even if they're not in half range, like the Meltastrat makes them fairly spicy too. Yeah. I tried that last week with a Land Raider. It's not bad.
Let's see, what else do I have? So I guess I can weigh in on the Alarus versus Aquilon discussion.
Yeah, let's hear your side of that debate.
All right, so I really like Inescapable Vengeance. I like the fact that Alarus can snipe characters. I think it's great. The only problems I have are if you don't land within 12, or you can't land within 12, you basically aren't going to get your money out of it. It's just not going to do enough if you're outside of 12, because you have so many less shots.
Well, you can always double fire.
Yeah, well, I mean, even with double fire, like, you're shooting each axe or spear twice if you're outside of 12, versus 4 times if you're inside of 12.
Yep.
It's just, you lose so much, and you lose all of the grenade launcher shots because you're outside of 12. It's like, it's very hinging on that in order for that stratagem to really work. And I think it's very possible. It's just, I just don't like the gamble. And then the other half of that is, when it comes to Aquilon versus Alarus on a straight like weapon loadout, I just hate Alarus. The weapons just make me sad. Like, I've been trying to run just Alarus in a few TTS games, and every time I just feel like my Aquilon would have done better. So I think Aquilon are my go-to still, just because they're better without having extra strats poured into them. And I think, obviously, we have so many good strats that we have to really pare down the number of strats we use, because we really need to keep the CP to use those important strats when you need it.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure, I can see... the whole kind of Aquilon Alarus debate is really kind of moot, because at the end of the day, they're both really good units, and we're debating between like getting an A plus and an A like 1.5 plus or something. Like, that's a stupid analogy, but like, we're really debating, like, I can't even come up with an analogy right now, but you know what I mean. It's like, it's not like one is really good and one is really bad, because then the decision would be really easy. The fact that there is a debate is good.
I agree.
And that it's
probably a good time to be.
Exactly, and probably you'll be fine with either one, and in any given game, one might seem to do better than the other. And but yeah, I mean, it's great to have the option. Of course, we don't have the Forge World book yet, so there's still the X factor there for any Forge World unit.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're Aquilon all the way. Okay.
Yep.
And bikes. So, yeah. Bikes went up to 95 for base biker. And you got
I mean,
7 of them.
they just went up to 95. Period.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's a 5 point increase for me because I was looking at Hurricane Bolters before.
That's right.
So that's 35 points.
So what really draws you to the bikes? Is it the mobility? Like what is it about them?
It's the mobility combined with the fact that they don't die like Venatari do.
Oh yeah. Well, if you can't compare them to Venatari, that's not
I
fair.
mean, sure. Well, that's our only other mobility right now is like Venatari. I think so. I really like the durability aspect of just Terminators in general, which is why I've still been toying around with like a full Terminator list. But I really think we need an early push on the board state. So the bikes give you that because they will give you that 14-inch move right off the bat. So if somebody's ballsy enough to actually forward deploy, or they go first and they push into the middle, you are going to punish the hell out of them.
Yeah. And I think a lot of armies might be trying to do that now.
Yes.
Okay.
And there's actually one other thing that I've really been kicking around in my head about bikes that it might just be entirely just a theory craft thing or not. I don't know. But because of the fact that you have this fast movement, you might not always be able to get to wherever you need to go on this move. Like maybe you can't quite get to where that objective is. But even if you can get close enough to that objective, you basically prevent your opponent from getting on it. Because if they get onto that objective, you can stoop them.
Which
So
is now free.
it's almost, well, yeah, potentially a free stoop even, because Trajan. But the fact that you can basically keep your opponent off an objective by threatening a stoop, I think, could be really, really big.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because not only are they going to lose that objective if you stoop them, but they're basically handing it to you because now you're on it at the start of your turn.
And free movement.
Yes.
Oh yeah, and you're on it at the beginning of your turn. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, I like that. I like that. Okay. So I don't think anybody would argue with you that obviously the bikers are the fastest unit in our book, for sure. I think people just still have a visceral, and now it's even worse, a visceral gut feeling of paying 95 points. And that was already bad at 90, and now it's 95. Although, arguably, get the salvo for free. So, but what I have been trying to tell people is you can't think of the points now compared to points in 8th.
Sure.
Pretend the book never existed and the army just came out now from nowhere. I think that's how you have to treat things now, because it is a completely different game.
The way I look at it is I just look at the rest of everything else. I mean, most of the other hard-hitting or durable units for other factions went up even more. Considering 5 points out of 90 is, what, like a 5% increase? Something along those lines?
Yeah, like proportionately, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Versus the, like, 10 to 15 to 20% increase we've seen across the board in other factions. Like, it's chips. Easy money.
Yeah, like I'm saying, it's just a visceral response to the fact that everybody hated they were 90 before, that they've never come down since they were released, and now they've gone up the first time their points change. It's just a visceral thing with no real logic behind it sometimes. But I think it could totally work. So what shield host are you running?
So, because of the biker core, I think Shadow Keepers is a necessity. Because effectively, you're negating strength 4, you're negating strength 6, and you're negating strength 7 on those bikes, which is huge. Huge. Especially since you're already missing out on the extra durability boosts that Terminators forget. So Shadow Keepers kind of brings that back a little bit to the bikes because of the toughness, because tough 6.
Yeah.
Now, I did hear Eric's idea of the turn 1 slam all your bikes into somebody's face solar watch thing, and I find that hilarious, and it could actually be really good. I just don't know if it would, so I don't quite want to gamble that hard yet. Um, the big thing is, I know the main reason why I got away from Custodes to begin with back in 8th was because we basically weren't durable anymore. We started off durable, and then it went away. And with all these strats pumping durability back in, Shadow Keepers is another durability ability and something I can use on bikes. So I think that's got to run with that Shadow Keepers.
Yeah.
And then that tacks on to the Telemon too, so now he laughs at las cannons because, I don't know, get fucked.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I think it's pretty accepted now that if you're gonna run a lot of bikes, you need to run Shadow Keepers. Because yeah, the difference between T5 and T6 being for Grim responsibility is huge.
Yeah.
Huge.
For sure.
Yeah. And it's just the way that strengths are kind of distributed amongst common weapons these days, you know? Yeah, just that mid strength level, it like almost hits all of those. And turning Marines into wounding on sixes is just so nice.
It is hilarious. I can't wait to run into like the strength 4 spam Marine list. Like, here's my intercessor horde, and I'm just gonna be like, you poor child.
Yeah. And if you really wanted to rub it in, you could put on the old Emperor's Old Spice deodorant. And then now they don't get any rerolls that they paid hundreds of points for either. And it's like,
I feel like
woohoo!
that's 100% happening against any Marine player ever, because all your rerolls, no,
Yes,
go
we're
away.
we were playing today Orcs versus Ultramarines, and Francois was shooting aggressors. It was like 160 shots or something,
Oh
full
my god.
rerolls. And I'm like, if I had Emperor's Old Spice right now, we would save ourselves 10 minutes.
Oh my god. It's so true.
Yeah. So okay. So cool. Now, what do you think? Okay, so this is revolutionary talk here. Me and Devin and a couple of guys, we've been looking at the Agamatis bikes again. Because as I say, it's a whole new world. You can't look at the points in isolation anymore compared to what they were. So now you can get the twin pulses are still stupid, 130 points. But the Adrathic guns, which are strength 6, -3 AP, 3 flat damage, 2 shots, no heavy penalty now, 105.
So, no bullshit. I legit reached out to some of my custode friends 2 weeks ago to ask if they had Agamatis because I wanted to test them at this event that I'm going to. And unfortunately, none of my friends have any.
No, nobody has them.
So it's like the one unit I don't have, and I can't test it at this event because I don't have it.
Oh, just proxy. Nobody will know.
I already asked the TO, and he said if I'm going to have a normal bike unit, that it would be too confusing, so no. And I'm like, because I was going to run too. So I think that there's definitely some play in the Agamatis. I was doing a lot of number crunching because I was just trying to see equivalency and like who could run this type of profile and how many points per shot effectively it would be. And they come out real close to basically everything else that we can stick an Adrathic profile on, besides like the Caladius and the Telemon, which is our normal go-tos for Adrathic because that's what they do. But I do like the idea, and I would really like to test it out. And ironically enough, even though no one likes the fact that the las pulsars are 130, if you look at the output of 2 las pulsars and a Caladius that has Elastis, it's basically the same for almost the same points. A little bit higher, a little less wounds, because obviously Caladius has more than 8 wounds. But you also get your 2-up armor still, 4-up invuln, and they can melee. So, like, I kind of want to try it.
You know what just really irks me about the las pulsar for 130 points? Really, really irks me to the bone. It's freaking D3 damage.
I know. I hate D3 so much.
Like, we already moan about D3 everywhere. So to
know.
spend 130 points on a D3 damage gun, I just can't do it, man. I just can't. And it's more than it was before. I just can't.
It's only, I think it went up by like 10 points. I mean, yeah, it sucks. Don't get me wrong. I don't like the points, but I still think that it's worth messing around with. I think for sure.
Yeah, I mean the flat three. I mean, so if you're running a unit of those guys, let's say five of those guys, that's a whole bunch of points. But now you've got that. You've got the Telemon putting out flat three. You've got a whole crap ton of flat three to go with your, D3. That's sounding kind of sweet, but we're gonna see. I'm gonna run them on Saturday. I'm running a 5 or 6 man unit in both of my lists on Saturday,
Nice.
to see how it goes. This is the grand experiment, version 2. Yeah, and just for you, Shane, I might sub Aquilon in for Alarus and see how that goes.
Okay.
Like a part of me is like a cheeky late game split might get you a bunch of primary points and win the game for you. I don't know. That potential, it's hard.
The biggest problem I have with Unleash is that effectively that means you have no more defensive strats because you can't use any of them. It's on one dude at that point.
Yeah. But I think you
Um,
do it late game, right? Maybe it gets you the last few recon points. I don't know. It's very situational, but
yeah, I think that there's a very few situations where it'll come into play unless you like literally make a meme list out of it. I just I just don't see it really doing much other than just being really funny and cool.
somebody did suggest that today on the Discord. I don't know if you saw
I
that.
I did see that, and that's why I said a meme list because that it sounds hilarious.
Yeah,
Like
so
here's 20 individual Alarus in the middle of the table. It does sound really funny. I'm not
that's
gonna
the
lie.
ultimate MSU Custodians Army. 20 individual Alarus custodians running around.
Oh my god.
Yeah, some armies just wouldn't be able to do anything about that. It's just funny. But yeah, so I don't know. This Saturday is the experimental games, so maybe I will throw some. I do like my Aquilon. I played with Aquilon for many months. So we'll see. We'll see. Okay, you got me inspired there. But I'll let everybody know how the Agamatus, or what I call now the Adaga bikes, because it's Adrathic Agamatus, how they go this weekend. And I just think the 3 damage is so good against so many things right now that are 3 wounds, 2 wounds, or with Feel No Pains, Death Guard, Grey Knights, Mirror Match, which is going to be our next topic. Yeah, like I just think that flat 3 is like so nice. Strength 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, all our other Drathic is like strength 5, so they get an extra strength on that too.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, until you step up to vehicles, they're all strength 5 basically.
Yeah, so the strength 6 just helps you against your Gravis armor Marines,
Yep.
Terminators that's buffed in toughness, like Death Guard stuff, Deathwing Knight, stuff like that. So it could be juicy. And if you really do need to shoot something big, you can always run the old +1 wound strat. And now if they're not hitting their invulns, they're taking flat 3 on that. That's pretty juicy.
Well, the +1 wound is versus higher toughness in melee, though, right?
No, it's at any time. Is it just in melee? Oh, it might just be
Pretty
melee.
sure it's just in melee.
Oh, you ruined my trick there.
Yeah, trust me, when I first saw Slayer of Tyrants, I thought that too, and then I saw in the fight phase, and I'm like, oh.
Slayer of Nightmares. Oh, fight. Ah.
Yeah.
Ah.
Infinite Sadness.
Okay. So, yeah. Okay, so the next topic of discussion, Shane, is the mirror match. So, Custodes bandwagoning is a thing. I already know at least 6 people who have bought or are buying or have already been playing Custodes out of nowhere. And that's fine. There's no hate for bandwagoners. People are going to do what they need to do, and more players, the better. But that means where the mirror match was an extremely rare occurrence before, and you would go out and buy a lottery ticket, now it may be actually quite common. In the RTT last weekend, somebody played 2 Custodes players in 3 rounds. So what do we do against the mirror match? How do we build for that? And what kind of what do we have to change about how we play?
So, I think the mirror is going to be really interesting. I think everybody's going to have at least one Terminator unit, if not more so. So really, we're going to need the AP because AP 1 and 2 ain't going to cut it, which means a lot of the stuff that we would be like smacking each other with is already around that AP2 range. So we'd really need to bring stuff that's AP3. And ironically enough, I think one of the best weapons we have to dish that out is a Caladius with an Elastus.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the flat 2 damage, which is going to be really good against Terminators versus 3, because you're not really getting anything at 3, and it's -2 or -3 AP. So you're ignoring that, ignore AP, and just going to punch through. Uh, and then pretty much all of our weapons need to be in that same category. So looking at Alarus, you're going to have to be pumping the stratagem into axes to make them AP3.
Yeah. Or else you just get ignored and do nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Or you're just like, oh, well, that's cool. I'm going to save mine on 2s, and you're just going to die. Which is another, in my opinion, another reason to run Aquilon, because I don't have to use a stratagem to be AP4, because I'm just AP4.
Yep. Or spears.
Yeah, spears will be good in the mirror just because of the fact that you can push the 2 up to wound, which is, well, I mean, granted, they'll probably use the transhuman equivalent, because why wouldn't you at that point when you know you're going to get punched in the face?
Yeah. But then you're trading 1 CP for 2 CP, so...
Yes, which is worth it, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, still D3, which sucks, but the -3 is there natively.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's interesting. So, those Agamatus that we talked about, -3, flat 3, that's pretty spicy. The Telemon... as you said, the Caladius is actually a really interesting pick. I've been toying with just running a single Caladius just as a roving, sniping sort of tank. I just think it will die too fast in a normal sort of meta, but, the gun is still very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, someone leaves their
very
character...
good at everything that's not T8.
Yeah, like you leave a character 3.1 inches away from your nearest unit, and boom, that character's gone, right?
Yep.
From like 60 inches away.
Yep.
But yeah, okay, so so the question, how do we deal with our own Terminators? So run AP3, Aquilon good because they're strength 10, so they're wounding on 2s naturally, they got the AP, so Aquilon seem to be well suited for the mirror. How do we deal with bikes? Same sort of principles, really, although you hit them with a bunch of -1 shooting, it usually does a number on bikes.
Yeah, I think bikes in the mirror effectively are going to wash because of the fact that most of the things that we have deal well with bikes, and vice versa. The bikes will deal well with what we have. So it's kind of, you're going to trade, I think, at that point.
Yeah.
Let's see, what else was I thinking on that? Something big.
So it's hard to know right now how common it's going to be to run into the mirror. If you don't go to tournaments, you probably might not ever run into the mirror. Or if your closest 2 players all are now playing Custodes, you're always going to run into the mirror. But it's hard to know how much is going to be, like...
I think it's gonna be common, honestly. As soon as people start seeing how the missions play and start seeing some tournaments happen, I think it's gonna happen a lot more.
Yeah,
a lot more.
The minute we get like a big GT won by Custodes, and that'll be game over. It'll be like pretty common. Okay, I'd still like to believe that playing Custodes is not straightforward, and that for the most part, although it's easier to survive now if you just be very aggressive, generally it doesn't pay to be too overly aggressive.
Yeah.
How do you think we can adjust how we play if we're in the mirror? Do you think we both just stand on our sides and call it a draw, or?
Well, so I think who gets the first turn is going to be a big deal, I think. Because effectively, you have the first go at board presence. Now, granted, the second player can counter with a teleport homer, but as long as you pay attention to where their Vexilla is, or you bring snipers, aka a Vindicare or Alarus, granted, if you use your Alarus for that, you're probably trading your Alarus at that point. I think having the early board presence is going to be really important, because effectively, in order to counter, your opponent has to expose themselves as well.
Mm-hmm. And just slug it out.
And as it stands right now, the way the missions are built, going second has the largest drawback in the fact that your last turn literally means nothing.
Yeah, you don't get a chance to counter your opponent's plays, and you can be countered.
Yeah,
Yeah. There are only 10,000 of us, so we hope you can come to a friendly agreement at the table that you just draw, and nobody has to die for the sake of the Emperor. But it will
it's,
probably come to blows at some point.
it's just a training mission. It's fine.
Yeah, it's a blood game. Yeah, so I think, like with any matchup, we now have the option of playing quite aggressively and surviving. So I think in the mirror, if you get the opportunity to go first and you deployed to take advantage of that, I think that's depending on the mission and where the terrain is. I think that's, as you say, it's a decent play. The other thing I think that people should consider is how good is the other player compared to you, because some players like yourself have been playing for a long time. You know what your army can do and what it can't do, what it can take and what it can't take, and so you play accordingly. Whereas somebody who may be just coming in new and it just got a feel of, wow, these stratagems are really strong and I'm just gonna like do this and this and this, may not have the same calculations of risk, right?
Sure.
Can be difficult to assess that obviously at the table, but I can generally tell just by how people deploy.
Yeah, I think it's a good call. I know one thing that I definitely like doing I mean, granted, it's pre-COVID meta, but I like to go to RTTs to do a lot of practice versus like practice games themselves, just because I play a lot of different people that way.
Yeah.
Um, and anytime I'm trying something brand new, I will try to push the envelope just to see how it would go. Even if it means I lose, that game in the RTT, at least I know the edges of it. So I
Yeah.
think a lot of that is worth doing, especially now that it's basically just like the Wild West for meta.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a two-edged sword. One is people should try lots of things and try and play them to their, craziest ability. The first game I used the Venatari and I pushed them straight up the board, used a whole bunch of CP to keep them alive, double shooting them, and they performed pretty well. But then you get a real sense of where these guys sit, in terms of true durability and output. So not only should you try new stuff, but try and push things as you say. The double-edged sword, of course, is that people want to try all. We have so many things to try,
Yeah,
and it's tempting just to try one thing and it doesn't work one time and then just dropping it, right? And probably there are so many good ways to play our army is the real problem. It's not a problem. It's a good problem to have.
it's definitely a good problem to have.
Yeah, so you could see by the fact that we have so many debates on our Discord is because there's so many good ways to play, and there probably is not one that's way better than the other. And so people get really passionate about their way of playing, and it's hard to know unless you've tested everything, which we can't do right now.
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question now. Other than bikes, I guess, is there a secret pick in the book that people aren't playing or talking much about that you think could be really good? Or a shield host or a unit or a strat that people are overlooking?
Um, Actually, I think so. There's a shield host thing I kind of want to talk about. So the Aquilon or Aquilon shield, which I know I super hyped in that War the Spider article, mostly because of that one character build.
Yeah.
I think if the meta goes the way that it could, which is everybody starts getting a little heavier into doing like snipery kind of stuff. And this is not a prediction. This is just a me thinking hat on. I think having that shield host could be really important because we are still very character driven by the fact that our characters are force multipliers and we want to keep them close to things so that way they don't die because obviously that's a lot easier now. Um, So if the meta does start shifting back to a snipery, like Raven Guard kind of thing, because people get better at protecting their characters, I could see play on that shield host just because you have the stratagem to say, oh, those are snipers shooting my character. No, that's not happening. I mean, in addition to the fact that if you do decide to go the quote unquote dirty super route, that unit can jump in front of a different character from a different army that you're using as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, the conundrum for us is we have at least 4, if not 5, good shield hosts. But there's really mostly one thing you want from each.
Sure.
And it costs you now to run multiple detachments. So then it's like, which do I really want? And man, the amount of time I've spent in these internal debates, lying in bed at night, it's midnight, I need to sleep. I'm like, God, I really want to do that, but I don't want to do that. Oh, it's like endless.
Yeah.
And it's
And
like,
I think, go ahead.
no, you go.
Okay. I was going to say, I definitely think shield host wise, sticking to one, you really have to, just because you spread yourself too thin trying to go into multiple shield hosts, I think.
Yeah, I toyed with double shield hosts at one point, and while it's nice to have like a bit of Shadowkeeper and then run like some Dread Host guys or whatever, I just find not only you're giving up the CP for that, but it just dilutes it a little bit. And people are like, well, you should run Dread Host because there's 3 things we like there, and everyone else is just one thing. Well, it's not just a matter of like how many things you like. It's what utility are you going to get out of those things, right?
Yeah.
So, and again, it just goes back to the fact that, you know, they all have ways of playing, right? Like, it's like, and right now we don't know what's going to be. Let's say 6 months down the line, everybody's got freaking snipers everywhere, that we probably will all be running Aquilon, or Aquilon, I guess we should separate it from Aquilon. Yeah. But who knows? So it's really hard to know right now. So probably people should just play what they want to play, and test everything out. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so that's your secret pick. That Aquilon shield might be useful. What do you think of Eric's emissaries?
So I really like their stratagem. I think that it's super good. I just wish that we had a way to use it more than once. Let's see. He was doing that plus the warlord trait, right? For the extra aura.
Yeah.
Aura range. Oh, and he was talking about the Vexilla too.
And the Vexilla.
So the Vexilla, I don't know. I feel like because of the fact that you're replacing your Vexilla with that, I can't get away from my -1 to hit. It's just too strong.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe -1 to hit terrain is all over the table in the future, and then maybe, but I don't know. I can definitely see the extra aura range being big, because effectively it means you can be more spread out as long as your Vexilla is still safe. Because effectively you have like your Telemon caddying your Vexilla around, and then the rest of your units are 9 inches away, which is a big deal. But it's just the only problem I have is that stratagem is only on one offensive output. Which if you're running like a mech list, sure, one tank is going to do real well, and then the rest are going to be like, well, I'm almost as good.
It seems extra limited too, because all our defensive stratagems allow us that one unit to tank everything for the phase.
Yeah.
You know,
exactly.
like we've gotten used to that. Like, okay, I use it on one unit, and now everything that shoots at them gets it. And that even counts for the reroll, Emperor's Old Spice, right? So,
Yep.
So now you have this offensive stratagem that only affects like one thing, and it's like seems less good, but
Yeah.
it is good, no doubt. And I guess we'll know as more books come out in 9th whether the prevalence of these modifiers becomes way more common. You know, AP modifiers and stuff that maybe not that common right now.
Sure. Yeah, I think if AP modifiers and wound modifiers like start popping up like candy, then that will be way better.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. It's also they need to define modifier. It's not in the glossary, and it's not clear exactly what a modifier is. Do they just mean numeric modifier, or do they mean something that a modifier is just something that changes something?
Sure.
So transhuman is technically a modifier. You've changed the wound roll to a 4+. So it's not clear how it's written what a modifier is.
I agree.
So it'd be nice if they cleared that up. We did send that on our big list of FAQs to GW.
Nice.
We
Nice.
compiled like 15 questions and we sent them all in. And they're like, "Who are these Custodes hardcore people? They're so hardcore. They have like their own Discord. What the hell's up with that?" So, all right. So you got an event. What, this weekend? Next week? Not this weekend. It's the launch weekend. Or is it a launch event?
No, actually, there is a launch event that I'm literally. So I don't know if I mentioned this, but I decided to repaint all of my custodes because I was tired of having a really basic, terrible paint job. So I'm trying to get it done before this weekend, which may or may not happen, will be fun on the launch day. But yeah, this is supposed to be the launch day, and then I actually have another one coming up. I think the weekend after that. It's crazy. Like things are starting to kick off around here, so I'm trying to like jump back in.
Okay. So guys, somebody has just asked about the Discord on the chat. So please join the Discord. The link is right there, and I just posted in the chat a new link because this one expires like every day. It's a pain in the ass. But anyway, okay. So Shane, that's all the questions I had for you. We're gonna go to the Discord questions, of
Okay.
which there are a number. All right. What would you say is the minimum size bike unit?
I would say 5, but even that feels too small for me. A lot of our stratagems are really based upon having one large unit. So you don't want to minimize too far, but I can definitely see going down to 5 to avoid blasts. But I'm not sure how much of a deal that's going to be. But I wouldn't go less than 5.
Yeah, I don't think blast's going to be a big deal, but I agree. I think that's the same as it always has been. I've always been saying that 5 is the minimum. If you want your bikes to do something significant, as a scout unit, 3 guys maybe, but then that's like a lot of points for like a little scout unit.
Yep.
So yeah, I would agree 5. But if you're gonna do bikes, you might as well do bikes.
Yeah.
I was toying with a list which had 9 bikes in it at one point, and that was like so many points, and it just freaked me out.
Ironically enough, the list that I was talking about earlier that I'm going to run, I was not going to bring a Telemon, and I was going to bring 9 bikes. Because it's just such a critical mass of deal with it.
It's like the old days. Oh yeah, the old days. Okay, this question FTGL. Oh, okay. It's our deep strike stratagem versus using strategic reserve. They didn't specify. Maybe as it relates to doing bikes. I think you have to use the deep strike stratagem because if you have a big unit with the reserves rule, you're going to be paying like a crap ton of CP just to reserve them.
Yeah. I mean, I think even with just everything else, there's not a lot of units that we have that are low enough PL that we're going to only be spending 1 on.
Yeah.
Granted, now if you're running like 2 units in reserve, then maybe 1 and 1, because then that only costs you 2 CP versus 3.
That's true. Yeah. Okay, sorry, that question wasn't super clear. So, how many Guardian squads do we need for objective camping? Well, as we've been discussing, maybe you don't need any. Radical thoughts.
I can see merit in it for sure. I prefer to try and take early board state. So if I have forward pressure on the enemy's objectives, I don't need something in my backfield.
Yeah, And if you've played enough games already, you realize the term backfield is relative now. There's not really much sitting in your backfield like in the old days. Everything is fairly central. Everything is placed, like pre-placed. It's fairly central. You're not going to be chilling out in your deployment zone for too much. And then they say, well, you need guardians to do actions. Well, not really. Those kind of secondaries are pretty shit. And with bikes as well, you can easily do recon, even behind enemy lines, things like that. Those things open up to you, whereas you couldn't with a foot-based list by and large. So I don't think you really need to concentrate on actions at all, to be honest.
I think if you build a list to do actions,
It can be
then
powerful.
sure. I think have we talked about secondaries at all? Really?
No, we haven't. We can
Do
talk
you
about it now.
want to segue into some secondaries?
Yeah, like what secondaries would you pick for your list with like a big bike and a big Terminator unit?
So, with the current list I have, I definitely think that domination is going to be a big one because I'm going to want early board presence and it's end of turn scoring. So effectively, if you hold more than half, there's 3 points, I think, right off the bat. And doing that 3-4 turns, I think, is pretty doable. Obviously, while we stand, we fight is really good. The big thing is making sure you have a list that supports it, because if you have like a bunch of tanks, then it's your tanks, and that's probably not going to be good.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you got like Telemon, Trajan, and like one other tough target,
That'd be
like
the Vexilla.
yeah, like my other list had Telemon, Trajan, and a Land Raider. That was like, free 15 points basically.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like Telemon and 2 hard to kill characters. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm going to keep those 15 points, I think.
Yeah.
And then really at that point, you can look at what your opponent has for the third. Because like if they have a bunch of vehicles, the big game equivalent is going to be a good pick. I think even if they have a bunch of characters, going for assassination is still probably worth it because you're going to have the mobility of the bikes early. Maybe they're not able to screen them very well late.
As the game goes on, turn 3, turn 4, people lose, especially now with new edition, they lose that 3-inch screen. And also, you tend to start getting to the characters, right?
Yeah.
So even 3 characters, most lists will have 2 or 3 characters. That's 9 points. That's decent for like your third secondary, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then if you like build for secondaries, so actions, so like raise the banners. I think that there's actually some really good builds that we could do if you want to do that secondary. Since it's locked to infantry and effectively not advancing, you really have 2 choices in this where either you have Venatari, because that gives you your turn 1 push with Venatari onto objectives, or 1 to 2 transports, because effectively coming out of a transport, you have another 3-inch movement. And 3 plus 6 is 9, and I think most of those objectives start 12 inches away from your deployment zone, so granted, now you're within 3. So realistically, if you do transports or Venatari, you could build a list designed to do raise the banners. And then another one, which is in the GT pack, which when I saw it, I realized is like going to be stupid easy if you bother trying to deep strike at all, is what was it called? It's the deploy scramblers, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
where you
your
do
zone, middle, enemy zone.
Yeah, and that's the 10 points for that? Like, you do that in 2 turns, and then whenever you get in your enemy's deployment zone. So that's like turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, done. 10 points.
Yep. Yeah, that one seemed pretty good. Yeah. So, actually, if you think about it, at first it seemed like all the secondaries were very dire, like, oh, I gotta do all this, blah, blah, blah. But actually, there are a bunch of secondaries that our army is pretty well suited to do.
Yep.
So, and I don't think many people get a lot of secondaries off of us. They'll have to choose secondaries that they have to do themselves.
Yep.
So I think that's good. So just going back to transports, the old debate, Land Raider versus Coronis, or you don't like any of our transports. Where do you sit on the old transport thing? The Land Raiders picked up a lot of steam recently.
I saw. I'm not super big into our transports just because generally we don't need them. Um, as far as like Land Raider versus Coronis, I understand why people like the Land Raider. I am not one of them. I think the only reason I like the Coronis is that you have the Invuln, and I want to say that it's actually a fatter model, which is really good for trying to build to that whole deploying out for raise the banners. Because if you have a fatter model, you have multiple units in there, which I know you could have like I think 2 3-mans inside,
Yeah, 6 models. Yeah.
and then you basically push to 2 objectives from that transport, which could be really big. Um,
Yeah.
but just I know that the Coronis offensively is not nearly as good as the Land Raider.
Well,
I'm just
the
not sure
the
I would want
Melta
to.
strat made the Land Raider a lot
Yeah.
punchier.
Oh, I know. I've never really liked las cannons, but
That's because
I
they
can
didn't
see
have
it.
the Melta rule.
I know. I can see it. I can. It's just not me.
Yeah, I think you just have to like the Land Raider or not, and it does put itself into a specific style of play for sure. All right, let's go back to the questions. Oh, it scrolled. Okay. Okay, updates on the shirts. Yes, the shirts are coming. I just got shown a proof today of the final shirt. It looks good. Hopefully within the next week we'll be able to order these shirts. Have you heard about these shirts, Shane?
Is this the I played it before it was good shirt?
Yeah, I played Custodes when they were bad shirts. Yeah, yeah. Should we build or deploy to go first or second? Well, I think if you can go first, it's a big up for everybody in this edition so far. So, so far successful going first. Okay.
I think so. On the first or second, there is one scenario where I think going second would be good, and that's if you're playing the how many reserves can I out reserve you game.
Mm.
But even then, it's a gamble, and I still think you probably are still better off going first.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think we can get away with running one HQ? Well, we covered that. Do you believe every shield host is viable? We also covered that. Do grav tanks have a use? We kind of covered that. I don't really like our mech options right now, like other than dreads. I just think the tanks don't. They're okay, but
ironically enough, if it was not for the fact that I could only take 2 fast attack choices in a patrol, I would actually probably be running 2 or 3 palace tanks.
Mm-hmm.
Because I really like the palace. I like the board presence. I like the fact that it's basically 2 bikes worth for half the price, and it's a little bit of anti-tank punch. It's just enough to be annoying as shit for your opponent.
Yeah, I have to deal with it. Yeah, just pushes out quick and gets onto things, and you expect them to die. Like they're like in Victor war suits, except they don't punch as hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just push them out, and they're gonna do annoying things and get you some primary points at the beginning of the game.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. Inquisitors, assassins. Well, we talked about assassins. How about inquisitors? What do you think of our inquisitor buddies?
So I do really like inquisitors, and I think that they offer a lot to custodes. The main reason why I don't want to run an inquisitor is because of the missions. Because we have aboard the witch, I think, as a secondary, as an option, being only accessible if you don't have a psyker.
Yeah.
Makes me not want to bring an inquisitor, because me having a way to just have a secondary that guarantees me 15 points against Grey Knights or Thousand Suns is huge.
Yeah. Against
like that's already the matchup that I don't want. So if I can guarantee more points out of it, the better it is.
Yeah, and it's more than that too. Like it's like Grey Knights, Thousand Suns, Chaos in general, Eldar probably. There's a lot of armies that you could get a decent number of points off of that secondary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. CP regen mandatory. We talked about that actually. Revolutionary new thoughts that maybe just the free strat is good enough because that's kind of equivalent to a bunch of regen. Um, would you pick Trajan over a shield captain with captain commander, relic, and warlord trait? If you had a different warlord, could you only choose one of those two? Well, we kind of talked about that. Trajan is a boss. So how about in your list if you were just to run like a shield captain on bike because he kind of keeps up and
So if I was just gonna run a shield captain on bike, I'm not even sure I would want it. Just because, like I said, I'm really bad at rolling 5-ups when I need them. Because it just would feel like a gamble. Because I have to make sure I nail it on 2 turns to even get a 1 CP out of it. And at that point, I think I'd much rather just spend that CP and take like Unstoppable Destroyer instead.
Thoughts on the Aquilon Dreadnought?
Um, the only problem I have with the Aquilus is it feels like you're subbing Terminators for this Aquilus because they're doing the same job. They're in the same slot. They're roughly the same amount of output for the points, but you lose out on the Terminator stratagem. Now, if you're already running a block of Terminators and you're not running a Telemon, sure, because then you have that the Dreadnought half damage stratagem to use on that Aquilus that you would normally be using on your Telemon.
Yeah.
And then that also gives you a bonus to having the +1 attack and reroll charges. So there's play. I think if you have a Telemon and Terminators, I say no.
Yeah.
But if you have one or the other, maybe.
So what about all the 2 and sometimes 3 Telemon lists you're seeing out there?
So I think 1 Telemon is best, just because again you are getting the most utility out of your stratagems. But I do really like 2 Telemons, if not just because it's funny as shit.
Yeah.
Ironically enough, that Terminator list that I keep talking about, like the whole like creepy in the background, I've got a Terminator list. I have 2 Telemon in that list right now, just because it's fucking hilarious.
2 Telemons and 10 Terminators.
I think it's 2 Telemons and like 15 Terminators, like 3
Nice.
units of 5. Just march it up the field and you lose.
Oh man, I like that list.
I want to say that it's in my faction focus, so because I tried to make a what I thought would be a good list for each like major archetype list. I don't have a transport one though, so all you transport people, I'm sorry. Maybe I'll try and work one in before I push it for the final.
Nice, nice. All right. So, which shield host underrated? I think we talked about that. Do you need to use bikes? We obviously talked about that. Favorite secondaries? Yes. How scared are we of psychers and mortal wounds? So we kind of talked about that. But what are your thoughts on sisters? Most people have kind of given up on sisters.
I mean, the biggest problem to sisters is that they get 1 use. I mean, you're going to pop it out in front of your stuff. It's going to deny 1 psychic phase worth of mortal wounds, but only smites, basically. Anything that's targeted mortal wounds, you're just going to ignore them. And then they're dead, because your opponent's going to be like, well, now I can kill those because they're out in the open, or they're in front. So I don't like the fact that they are tough 3, 1 wound models that die really fast.
Yeah, and they went up in points.
I mean, that's not helping it for sure.
Yeah, and I think bringing a rhino doesn't really solve too many problems.
No. You're like compounding it even further at that point.
You're just throwing more points into the fire.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, we're going to throw more points into this. Like, ironically enough, I almost think I would rather have the rhino.
Just by itself.
Yeah, because it's going to soak those mortal wounds. Fuck it. Like, here you go. Here's a rhino for mortal wounds.
Just take a palace then.
Exactly. And like, I mentioned that in our article for War of the Spider was like, I always use my palace as my mortal wound soak because I don't care. It's 8 wounds. Go for it.
Yeah.
And that's going to chew up a whole psychic phase worth of smites generally. I mean, unless it's like Magnus plus a whole bunch of fucking shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is possible.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a strong argument for if you got 100 points and nothing to do with it, throw a palace in.
Well, 105 now,
Oh,
but yeah.
105, yeah. Damn, that character's 5 points more.
Yeah.
Okay, and so there's a new Grey Knight player in our chat. He says, why don't we like that matchup? I think, okay, so first thing I'm going to say about Grey Knights is that they are still good. Okay?
Yeah.
Everybody out there is like, Grey Knights is dead, Grey Knights is dead. Grey Knights are not dead, okay, by any stretch of imagination. In fact, Grey Knights have not even managed to really play in the meta yet because COVID hit. People don't know how good Grey Knights are. They are good. And just because some of the 9th edition changes maybe makes the stupid non-interactive double paladin bullshit maybe not quite as good, it's still good. And there's probably 100 other good ways of playing Grey Knights because their book is good that people just didn't try because playing double paladin bomb was so easy. So if you're a Grey Knight player, your faction is not dead, okay? Okay, now, why are we so scared of Grey Knights? Because they're a good faction, and they got our main weakness, which is still mortal wounds.
Yep.
Every mortal wound hurts like a shot to the heart. It's like, ugh.
And a lot of shots that
Yeah.
potentially are -1 and -2 AP.
Yeah. I mean, so our Terminators are key in surviving. I was mathing it out, how many Terminators die to a fully buffed Paladin unit with like 4 side cannons, and it was like half of one Terminator. If
Now,
you use all your buffs.
Is that AP2 or AP3?
AP2.
Because they can get to AP3 with side cannons.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. I asked this a Grey Knight player, and I said, "What's the highest thing you get at AP2?"
So, right before COVID hit, I had been messing around with Grey Knights, and I had taken Grey Knights to like 2 GTs right before COVID. And you can pump a side cannon to AP3 because you have the stratagem to pump it to AP2, and there's also a chaplain litany that gives one unit another bonus -1 AP to all of their weapons.
Okay.
So you pump side cannons to AP3, and they basically become murder machines for Custodes.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think Grey Knights is a really hard match. I'm playing them on Saturday, double Paladin bomb. It'll be Nick's first ever game with Grey Knights, though, so maybe I can use that to my advantage.
Yeah, that's going to be gritty. It's going to be super gritty.
Well, the thing they have to make sure now is obviously if you touch them, they can't fall back in Psychic, although they'll probably just blow you away with the Psychic while they're there. And also they have to cast all their powers on one thing at a time.
Yeah,
So-
that's actually, I think, going to be the biggest trouble for Grey Knights is that you're not going to jump between units anymore. You have to really pay attention to what order you cast everything in.
Yeah, so as a new player especially, you might fuck up that order a number of times, right? Or assign your powers incorrectly, or
Yep.
So that's a real thing. So I'm hoping I have some hope there. But yeah, so Grey Knights are not dead.
No, far from.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, every kind of top faction has its kind of kryptonite probably, and so they are still our kryptonite, I feel like. But
Yeah,
I would
they're
like
gonna be rough.
to keep that rumor going though, the Grey Knights are dead, so that maybe we don't see that many Grey Knights players. It's dead. It's totally dead. It's totally dead. Don't play it. Go play guard, or yeah.
Nice.
Okay. Any more questions in the chat? Let me just check the Discord. I think we are done the Discord chats. All right. Okay, so Shane, thank you very much for joining me tonight. It was awesome to talk to you again, and welcome back to the fold.
Oh, thanks for having me back.
So, guys, don't forget, on Saturday is the launch of 9th edition. We will be streaming all day from about, 9:30, 10-ish, some point like that, all the way till late at night. We're trying to stream you 3 games, although there is a barbecue and a pool, and so who knows what happens. But we will be trying to bring you 3 games. We were playing 6 games, so we're going to cover 6 games, but probably spend most of the stream on 3 games. There will be Custodes on the stream. I think my Grey Knights game will be on the stream, or maybe my Tau Revenge match. One of those 2 games will be on the stream, as well as all the other stuff. And so do join us on Saturday. And while you're building your Indomitus, Marines or Necrons or whatever it is. And thank you very much for everybody watching on YouTube, our followers, subscribers. Big shout out to the Discord and to our patrons. And thank you again, Shane, for joining us tonight.
Thanks, man.
All right. Good night.